Let's flash back a bit. Let's go back to 2010.
Yeah.
You were doing something as part of G-Cloud, as part of the formative stage in G-Cloud. Looking back on that, were the expectations that were set at the time realistic?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. There were about 40 of us, a mixture of private sector and public sector, supported by a small army of Deloitte consultants. And we were really putting the flesh on the bones of the sort of G-Cloud concept. I think in some ways we were a little naive, but in some ways we were, it was really good stuff. One of the areas in which we were perhaps a little naive is, cloud was very hypey at the time. It was starting to be adopted widely, but we expected that government organisations would be able to disintegrate their stacks, so effectively split out things like infrastructure from software, and migrate to cloud platforms relatively easily. With hindsight, when you actually look at the state of government IT and practice, most government organisations historically have been outsourcing their IT skills, so they don't actually understand their own applications.
Right.
So what we've been seeing over the last few years is some of the bigger departments, they've actually been building those skill bases internally. We've got GDS now, HMRC are probably the exemplars in that space. And the other end of the spectrum, we're seeing some success. And again, local government. Back then, we thought local government would be the place where G-Cloud would really work. I don't know how many hundred councils there are, but they all basically do the same stuff, looking after bins and lampposts and roads and whatnot.
You'd think.
So you'd think that G-Cloud would be perfect for them. And again, there we were a bit naive because it's kind of selling Christmas turkeys. An IT manager with a few servers and a couple of people is sort of putting them out of a job. But where we are seeing success is in that space is the software as a service. We heard one example just there. We host a company called Whitespace who basically do waste management software, which is cloud-based. And again, there's good adoption of councils. Whereas in the central government organisations, I think they really are having to try to understand their applications. And while in some instances, particularly if they're already on a mature proprietary platform like VMware, it is relatively easy to shift and lift. When you're talking about embracing an open standards-based, open source-based platform like OpenStack, it is often more challenging because you're not talking about a like-for-like thing. Sometimes you can package up a VM and move it across, but it's relatively rarely that simple. So with people like HMRC, we're seeing them starting to really build stuff from the ground up. There was some idealism, I guess back then, but still there was a lot of good stuff which we're now starting to see.
And there has been progress, undoubtedly. Can I ask you about the Cloud First mandate? That was seen as a big shove in the right direction for central government. Has that really had the impact that we all thought it was going to?
Well, I think you just have to look at the numbers. So, the 1 billion thing is counted a lot. We have to remember that £1 billion is the total G-Cloud spend to date. The actual run rate is about 40 million a month. So it's still getting on for £500 million a year, so it's still good. But then you break down that further, and actually less than 20% of that is actually cloud services, so infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. More than 80% of it is what for SCS, the consultancy services. So we're still really seeing a minute spend going to what we call true cloud services. So I think there is that mandate doesn't seem to be really being embraced. I think there have been some good reasons. There have been some good barriers. The kind of security situation was a mess. PSN didn't work. People didn't sort of understand their applications sufficiently. I would hope that going forwards, though, I think there's less excuses.
PSN works now, doesn't it?
At last, PSN has been just a pain in the backside. For us, we didn't have a GSL or GCSX connection, so we had to do it the hard way, get a new line in effectively.
Right.
And we discovered along the way things like the cryptographic interchanges, whatever they're called, things like that. You know, they weren't working until about a year ago. But the things that allowed BT's part of the network to talk to Vodafone's part of the network or whatever. Also, you know, it was supposed to be again, going back to the original concept, PSN was absolutely central. You know, you need a shared, secure platform on which these cloud services can operate. You know, the idea was that it was just a network. Now, that vision is now sort of coming in line with how the Cabinet Office see it. It should be just another network like the internet. But the idea was that all the other networks would be assimilated by it. So we wouldn't have N3 and PNN and the criminal justice arm and Janet and all the rest. They'd all be being assimilated into this one big network that was also cheap for people to connect to. And I can tell you from personal experience, it is not cheap compared to the what you can get an internet connection for. And by not cheap, I mean a couple of orders of magnitude out. That has improved. We're maybe an order of magnitude out, but I still think there's some way to go there.
Jessica, in her opening presentation, made the point that the digital framework, the digital marketplace, G-Cloud, whatever you want to call it, part of the objective was to increase SME business and access to government, and we get the figures touted out, and there's an impressive share in there. She also made the point that nowadays we have Oracle, Salesforce, Amazon, all part of the digital marketplace, all setting up UK data centres so that they fit inside with the data sovereignty concerns. Do you see a shift there? Do you think that the big boys and girls are coming to the playground now and they're going to take away the SME lunch?
Yes and no. Personally, I don't necessarily see a lot of them as a threat. I think SMEs can still, afford the customer the often the price advantage, the sort of innovative edge, particularly when it comes to things like embracing open source software, and that's what we specialise in. We take commodity tin, open source software, get it accredited in a high security environment and provide a hosting platform. And we can do that really quite quickly. So I'm not too worried about the vast majority of them. That said, when it comes to the sort of bottom layer, Amazon is the threat. And I don't think it's just a threat to small suppliers. I think it's a threat to the big suppliers and also to government. The war is starting in the infrastructure as service space in the private sector. Basically, Amazon completely dominates at the moment. And if we want to avoid a situation where in 10 years' time, we're basically having to do all this again because Amazon and moving higher up the stack, people like Google have become the new oligopoly in effect. The only way we can avoid that is by suppliers and government actually getting together as a community and working around open standards and open source technology so that we can maintain that, avoid that vendor lock-in and actually sort of maintain that freedom. The trouble is it really does need a community, and that's actually where Amazon's genius lies. What they've done that's so clever is that they've created an ecosystem. They've created an ecosystem around their APIs of people building and innovating, and then they assimilate the clever bits of that and build on from there. And even the big companies, even the giants out there, the Oracles and co, I don't think they can stand against that. We really do need to collaborate. And you see, people like Microsoft. I mean, they're moved to open source a lot of their software. I think they understand. That same sort of threat.
Did we ever think we did today?
Yeah, exactly.
Just one last question before we move on. But if we were 2-3 years ago, over there we had Liam Maxwell, because you just said oligopoly, and Liam would be there top thumping and saying oligopoly bad, and we are never going to extend these outsourcing contracts. We talked to Stephen from GES a bit earlier on about this and talked about pragmatic extensions of some of those outsourcing deals. But we're still signing 13-year outsourcing contracts. We were supposed to get over this, weren't we?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's incredibly frustrating. Quite why, and there was that 2-year limit, supposedly, and quite why anyone in their right minds, having seen the pace of technology over the last decade, would be signing contracts for so long. I really don't understand. It's a flagrant waste of taxpayers' money. It really is. And again, there's the digital marketplace. Yes, it's got its flaws. Yes, it would be great to see improvements like the ones you mentioned, the eBay style ratings. Right. Good to be able to do that for like comparisons. It's a little bit inaccessible, but there's a lot of good stuff on there. And I don't see why even some of those big contracts, when you actually look at them, they can't start to think, okay, well, with a bit of help from consultancies, how can we break this up and start to feed it through that framework?
Yeah. But like democracy, least worst option at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things that you just can't afford to have break. But at the same time, we're seeing HMRC, and we've been working with HMRC now for about 18 months. We've got an OpenStack deployment that's been running for them for about 12 months now, and it's been great working with them. It's very collaborative. They give us feedback. We're able to sort of add things, and work together to get the right platform for them. And they've got a bunch of other suppliers as well working with them. So if they can do it, because if their stuff breaks, money stops flowing into the coffers. Yeah. It's kind of bad. If they can do it, why can't other departments do it? I think that's the really big question.
I think that's probably a very good question for us to leave that on. We can sit here and have a natural morning, but yes. We must move on. Thank you very much indeed, Kate Craigwood.